everyone, it's Professor Fernandez here, and I hope you are having a great day. I'm having a fantastic day, and I am having a fantastic day because I get to continue on talking about um, structure, and specifically compare and contrast structure. Compare and contrast is one of those essays that if you've never written it before, it seems kind of overwhelming, kind of daunting, because it really combines creativity or a form of creativity with structure. And one of the things about, or a couple of things about the compare and contrast essay that you have to make sure to do is the brainstorming. You have to make sure that your thesis is on point, and you have to make sure that your structure is well and sound. Those three things contribute to a really well written compare and contrast essay. If you skip any of those steps, or you kind of bypass those steps or don't do as well as one of those steps, you can easily see it at the end product. So it's an essay that really depends on each of the steps to be done as well as possible. So in the last video, or at least the first video, I showed you the overall idea of the compare and contrast essay, and that was like a lesson in the compare and contrast: what it was, what the purpose of it is, what the thesis looks like, and a couple of the structures. Then the second video took part of the process and kind of outlined it for you. So I went and did a T-chart, and I didn't do a Venn diagram because it was easier to do a T-chart digitally or virtually than it was to do a Venn diagram. And so we did a T-chart, and then we went from the T-chart to the thesis. And from the thesis, we started working on a structure. And if you remember that video correctly, we were talking about Kit Kats versus Skittles, and how Kit Kats is by far reigns more supreme than Skittles. Do not fight me on this. I am the professor. You will lose. Okay, so from there, we have a choice whether we want to do a point by point or one side at a time type of structure. We learned about those three structures in the first video, which was the actual lesson. We learned about the point by point, we learned about one side at a time, and then we learned about the combo. Now, the combo structure is the type of structure that I would only suggest you do if you're going to do a longer piece, like if you're going to do something above 5 pages, because it gives you more room, more flexibility to do things. If it's something shorter than 5 pages, which is usually what you do in this class, you want to do either the point by point or the structure one. And by structure, I mean one side at a time. Okay, so I want to take that particular thesis and that particular thought from that video, the Kit Kats versus Skittles video, and I want to show you how I'm going to use that thesis and that concept to make a structure, or to make an outline that will help me do an essay. Ha ha ha. Now here, I want you to know that the purpose of the outline isn't to make sure that you have the Roman numerals in the right spots. That is not the purpose of an outline. The purpose of an outline is to literally outline what the essay could look like, to know if you have the certain things on the right spots. It could be used almost as a checklist. I have to make sure I hit this, this, and this in my essay, or this, this, and this in this particular paragraph. It also helps you to kind of write topic sentences, or main idea sentences, as you may call them, and make sure that those phrases that you need, like the transitional phrases, are there, and to make sure that everything is in order. Compare and contrast does a lot of things in order. Like, a lot of the structure of the essay and the strength of the essay depends that certain things are in certain order, right? And we're going to go over that as we go through this, all right? So let's look at the first thesis, or let's look at the thesis. Although Kit Kat and Skittles are popular candies in the United States, Kit Kat is a superior candy because it is made out of chocolate, wafers. The wafers add a nice crunch, and they are made by the most popular chocolate maker, Hershey. Chocolatier is the actual word, but I said chocolate maker in the video, so we're going to go with that. Okay, so you have what I like to call a 3-pronged thesis. It has 3 things we're going to talk about: what they're made out of, kind of the taste and the texture of it, or what they taste like, and then the manufacturing, who made it, and why that's important. So you have three things. Now, granted, this is a thesis that you could use on your basic 5-paragraph thesis. It is a very general thesis. And while you've probably have seen theses for the compare and contrast to be different than this, I would like you to use this thesis because this is a good general thesis for just about every essay you're going to use, minus say like a narrative or a memoir type of essay. Right? You want to have this type of thesis, and we're practicing. So I want you to make sure you have this thesis down and you understand it. Just because this is a thesis with 3 prongs doesn't mean we can't use it for a compare and contrast essay, and this is how we're going to use it. So I want you to notice how each of those prongs have a different color. So made out of chocolate is yellow, the wafers is green, and the candy maker is in pink, right? And so this is going to help us to understand the structure a little bit better. So the first paragraph is always going to be intro with thesis, done, 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 right? Boom. That's always easy. Conclusion is always easy. Conclusion is the conclusion. What is going to be interesting is the 3 paragraphs here. So this is the point-by-point structure, and the point-by-point structure literally means that you're going to have one point go against the other in one paragraph. So the first paragraph is the yellow paragraph, is essentially how it's made or what they're made out of, essentially. So how they're made. You're going to start with Kit Kats first. You're going to talk about how chocolate is awesome and is like the nectar of the gods. So that's one. So after you're done, you're going to move into the Skittles section of the same paragraph. They're not going to be different paragraphs. They'll be the same paragraph. And when you're moving into that same paragraph, into the Skittles part of the paragraph, you will have a transitional phrase. And the transitional phrase here is, while Skittles are also delicious, comma, by the way, that's like an introductory clause of a sentence. So there's a comma right after that. So that tells me, the reader, that, oh, you're done talking about Kit Kats. Now you're going to compare it to Skittles in that section, right? It's the same paragraph. Then when you're done, you're going to move to the next one. And that's the green section. And the green section talks about taste, or what's on the inside, right? Because that's what we have told the reader what we're going to do. We have told the reader in the thesis that this is the order we're going to talk about the things we're going to talk about. So the thesis really is a promise to the reader. These are the 3 things. This is the order I'm going to talk about. So not doing it in this order literally is like telling somebody they're going to get a Toyota Tundra and you give them a Yaris instead, right? You don't do that. So you want to talk about it in the order that you promised the reader that you were going to talk about. And you're going to use the topics that you promised the reader you were going to talk about them in. So the second thing I promised the reader I was going to talk about was the inside, or the taste of it, right? So the first thing in that same paragraph, right? So this is a different paragraph from the one. So we're in the 3rd paragraph, or the second body paragraph. And we know this because we have the Roman numeral 3, right? You can put the actual number 3. It doesn't matter if you have a Roman numeral. That's not the point of an outline, right? So we know that this is the 3rd paragraph. And so we know that we're going to talk about the insides. Now, I don't have the topic sentence of the paragraph here because I love to live dangerously. But you can actually have a topic sentence here if you need to, if this makes writing it, which is the next step after the outline, a lot easier. Okay? So, in the paragraph about the insides, we're going to start with Kit Kats. Yay, Kit Kats! And we're going to talk about the chocolate wafers and how good and crunchy and how satisfying that is. And then after we're done talking about that, we're going to move on to Skittles. And then we have our transitional phrase, which is in contrast, right? That is, we're literally saying, however, the beautiful shade I'm about to give you about Skittles is this. They're sticky and stick to the eater's teeth. And again, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Ooh, no. Do this. Why? Because that's a possessive. And anyway, that's a grammar lesson for another day. All right, so here we have Kit Kat, Skittles. Same paragraph. We're both talking about the insides, or the taste of it. And when we're moving from Kit Kat to Skittles, we have a transitional phrase, right? So we've just talked about the yellow section, the green section. Let's talk about the pink section now. Now we're going to talk about candy makers. And which candy we're going to talk about first? Kit Kat, right? We talked about Kit Kat first. We talked about Hershey, the Hershey Company, and the vision of Nestle and how beautiful and wonderful the company is and how long it's been there and blah, blah, blah. Then we're going to move, again, in the same paragraph, into Skittles. And we have a transitional phrase here. Despite the fact that Skittles is made by the Wrigley Company, comma, and we talk about the rest, right? So I want to point out a couple of patterns here. Pattern 1. When we're doing point by point, it's literally each paragraph is one of those prongs of the thesis here, like the yellow, the green, and the purple, or pink, purple or pink, pinkish purple, whatever. And this is something you probably already knew about and learned about. This is what's different. The pattern here. When you start talking about one candy or one thing, one car, one way of escaping the zombie apocalypse, whatever, it starts with that. And it's consistent throughout each of the paragraphs. What I mean by that, you see how in the yellow paragraph, we started with Kit Kat and then we transitioned into Skittles? Do you notice in the green that we start with Kit Kat and we transition into Skittles? And we did the same with the pinkish purple section, Kit Kats into Skittles. We did not vary from this pattern. We did not go into, say, the green paragraph and start with Skittles and then go to Kit Kat. We didn't do that. And that's what I want you to understand, that the structure of a compare and contrast essay is just as important as the thesis. Once you vary from the structure, the entire essay disintegrates. And that's how people end up failing the essay. They start thinking, oh, I understand the structure. Oh, I'm going to play with the structure a little bit. And then they decide they're doing something different and then it just falls. So make sure that you understand that once you start with something in that first body paragraph, the first thing you work on is the same thing for the other body paragraphs. You start with Kit Kats for one paragraph, it's consistent throughout the rest of the essay. Okay? So that's the point by point, because it takes one point and then it takes the other. See how that works? Okay. So now we're going to do one side at a time, right? And the next one side at a time essay really is 4 complete paragraphs in the essay. The other point by point is 5 paragraphs. It's a 5-paragraph essay with compare and contrast in it, right? But this one is a one side at a time, and it's only 4 paragraphs. And you're probably thinking, I would rather write 4 paragraphs than 5 paragraphs. It really doesn't matter. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. So it doesn't matter the number of paragraphs. What matters is how you are organizing the information for the reader. I personally would go with the structure that makes more sense to you. How you would structure, if you usually structure things like one side at a time versus a point by point, then I would go with that, right? I wouldn't go by, oh, this is only 4 paragraphs. You still have to have the same number of words. So that doesn't matter at all, right? So let's go. So you know that the first paragraph is the intro with the thesis. Yay! It's the exact same thesis. The only thing that's changed here is the colors that I'm using, right? So I don't confuse you with the other colors. So we know what it's made out of is blue. The taste or the insides are red, and then who it's made out of, who has made it, or the manufacturer is gray in this case, right? So with one side at a time, that means you're going to talk about all the Kit Kats first, and then talk about all the Skittles second, okay? So you're not going to move them in different directions, like, oh, I'm going to talk about Kit Kats, and then talk about Kit Kats some more, and then Skittles for the rest of this paragraph, and not move to Skittles until paragraph 7. First of all, there should be no paragraph 7s. There should be no paragraph 6. It's either 4 paragraphs or 5 paragraphs. Make a decision. Okay, so let's look at paragraph 2, right? And for this particular example, I went ahead and did topic sentences for each of the paragraphs. Why? Because for me, and again, has a lot to do with you as a writer. For me as a writer, in this particular structure, it's easier for me to write a topic sentence rather than the other structure. For me as a writer, I could just wing it. For you, you may want to write topic sentences for each one of those. It just depends on who you are as a writer. Since you are beginning writers, I would highly suggest you write topic sentences when you're doing your outlines, because it just makes it easier at the end, right? When you're actually writing this thing, you're like, oh, that's one less sentence I got to think about, right? Okay. So I have the topic sentence, and the topic sentence of paragraph 2 is that Kit Kats are clearly superior in ingredients, taste, and manufacturing. Do you see how that topic sentence kind of tells you what I'm going to talk about in that paragraph? And parallels or mirrors what the thesis is saying in the order that the thesis has written it. Again, this structure doesn't matter if you use this one or the one I taught you before. Structure is everything. Order is everything, right? So I'm going to talk about ingredients first, taste second, manufacturing third, right? So the first thing I'm going to talk about in the Kit Kat section, and is all one paragraph, right? Because this is paragraph 2 in the essay, so this is all in one paragraph, is that I'm going to talk about that they're made out of chocolate. And that goes with the first order right here in the thesis. Then I'm going to talk about the wafers and how wonderful and satisfying it is to crunch on the wafers, right? Look at that. The red goes with the red. And so that means the gray goes with the gray. So the last thing I'm going to talk about in the Kit Kats is the Hershey Company, the manufacturer, which is gray. 1, 2, 3, in the order that I said I was going to talk about it, I talked about it in this one paragraph. Now I'm going to go to the Skittles paragraph, and I want you to notice that there is a transitional phrase going into the next paragraph that's very similar into the transitional phrases that we had in the last structure, right? So unlike Kit Kats, and I like to talk about transitional phrases being a little bit of a shade, so I'm shading Skittles here a little bit. Skittles aren't as delicious and don't quite compare. How you like that shade, Skittles? Ha ha ha. I'm probably going to get an email from them. It's probably going to happen. And if I do, I would not shy away from free Skittles for me and my students. Okay. My students and I. Okay. So you see how these colors are in the same order as the colors in the thesis and in the same order as the colors in the previous paragraph. That means I'm going to talk about the exact same things in the same order, but about Skittles, right? And in this paragraph, I'm going to have lots of transitional phrases. While Skittles are also delicious, they have a hard outside that's mostly sugar and doesn't melt in your mouth, right? So I'm contrasting here from Kit Kats, and I'm going to write about that. In contrast to Kit Kats, I should clear that. To Kit Kats, the insides are sticky and stick to the eater's teeth, making the candy less enjoyable. See how that works? So I'm still contrasting. It's still in the Skittles paragraph. And so here's the last one, the gray section. Despite the fact that Skittles is made by the Wrigley Company, comma, ... add more information there. So we have each one of these sentences have a transitional phrase, and that transitions from us talking about Kit Kats and talking more about Skittles, right? So all of them have that. And these are, like, again, all one paragraph in the order of which I'm going to talk about them. And that doesn't mean there's three separate paragraphs here. That means there's 3 like little sections in this one paragraph, right? And I'm going to move through. Of course, the end is your conclusion. The conclusion ties it all up in a big, beautiful bow. You want to restate your thesis, and you're off to the races, right? So this is the structure between one side at a time and point by point. I'm going to put this along with this video in your class so you have something to compare it to. It's a difficult essay if you're not used to writing this way, but once you get it, you have it, and so you're able to pull this out whenever you need to, say like in a history class or in a sociology class, or an English 1302 class with your favorite professor in the world. So this is very interesting, or this is very, hopefully very useful to you to use, and that you can move on with your best and beautiful compare and contrast life. Email me if you need anything. And please do not hesitate to ask questions. Again, I don't expect you to know how to do this off the bat. This is a complicated essay, and it's a deceptively complicated essay. But you want to focus on 3 things. Your brainstorming. The better the brainstorming, the better the essay. You want to focus on your thesis and make sure that you're using the thesis of which I've asked you to use, which is the thesis with the 3 prongs or the 3 reasons in them, because I want you to be able to write a really good, decent thesis that you can use for whatever essay for the rest of your college careers. And then, of course, the structure. Mess with the structure, everything just disintegrates. Think of it as like playing Jenga. Jenga, if you move one certain piece out of the spot, the whole thing comes crumbling down, right? It's the same. It's like English Jenga. Yes, English teachers do sit in a room and we think about new and interesting ways to torture you. It's what we do. Like, we have to be entertained too. All right, you know my email. You know how to get to me. You know the writing lab situation. Let me know what else I can do to be helpful. Bye, guys.